Fiona, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Fiona is married to Martin.
Yeah, it's about that.
And you've been one of the blessings of the channel who I've met through, just because we had the channel and we sort of stepped out. And thank you for reaching out to us and being willing to blow the lid off a topic that is just like the massive elephant in the room for so many people. You are married to Martin. Thanks so much for talking with us.
You're welcome.
And as we all know, a good Scouse man is open for talking about his feelings.
Absolutely, that's me. Tears of joy and happiness and everything.
You were born a Jew.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now you see yourself
I
as...
see myself as a fulfilled Jew, but within the Catholic faith.
And Martin, did you always keep the faith? You brought up in the faith?
Pretty much. I was brought up in the faith for sure, yeah. So my parents were both quite sort of staunch Catholics. Our lives revolved around the kind of rhythms of the church, if you like, and the church seasons, which was great. So we used to go to the cathedral in Northampton. My dad was the MC there. And it was just part of the oxygen, really, of my life. And it always was. I started going to Lourdes when I was 15 as a helper with my parish church. I've been going every year since. I'm now running the pilgrimage. And so really, pretty much, yeah, I had a wobble, it's fair to say, when my mum died, and that wasn't a wobble with God. I didn't feel like God had done anything wrong, but I felt let down by the church. I've got very vivid memories of still going to mass with my dad because he needed someone to go with, really. But when it came to the creed, I would say all of the creed, but stop short of saying One Holy Catholic Apostolic Church because I was so hurt that I didn't feel I could really say that. But then it was really through an atheist friend that I came back to my faith when I was talking to him about it and just saying, this is horrid. And he just said, you need to decide who your God is. Your God is either the God that you've always said he was to me, so this loving, caring God who wanted the best for you, or his Father Christmas who grants wishes. He can't be both. And that stopped me short. And I was like,
wow,
you're right.
Called out by the atheist.
I know, right? I was like, that's me, Todd. I'm going to look away and see what I do think about this God. So yeah, so I went away and I was like, oh, do you know what? I can't. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We all fall short of the glory of God, don't we? I can't hold this against people. That's, you know, if people aren't going to hold it against me, then I can't hold things against other people. So I just made a decision for it, really, and went full throttle into it from there on in. So yeah, I started going to Youth 2000 prayer group. That's where I met Martin. Sometimes I do this thing where I speak something and I don't know it's true until I hear myself say it. And I went to the Youth 2000 prayer group with a friend, and on the way home, out of nowhere, I just kind of went, I feel like God wants me to marry Martin. I don't know where that came from. Oh my gosh. And so then for the next year, I just kind of put myself in his way, really. Got in the way. Yeah. And he's a discerner. He's not a fast mover until he's discerned, and then he's like lightning. So this is what I learned. So he kind of discerned for about a year, and then suddenly he was like, so we're gonna go out and then maybe get engaged and get married. How about we do all of those things? I was like, oh my gosh. So after about a year, it was really funny because I think the other thing in the Catholic Church perhaps is when you reach a certain age as a woman and you're not married, these questions all the time. When are you going to get married? And so to kind of throw people off the scent, really, I just would go.
Answer? Yeah.
Well, I was lucky because I just went, don't worry, the Lord's got it all in hand. I know who I'm going to marry. He doesn't know yet. I'm just waiting on him. It's fine. It's all fine. And people would say, oh, who's that then? And I'd go, oh, I had no idea Martin had any kind of profile at all. So I would say, oh, he's a guy called Martin from the cathedral. Oh, you won't know him. Every single time. Martin, oh gosh, I know Martin. Oh, Martin and I go back years. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm reaching critical mass now of people who know Martin and know this information. This is terrifying. And
were you dating at the time?
No, this was long before dating happened. This was just me and my own, slightly. So then I went on a retreat with a friend who I didn't actually know ever so well, but I went on a retreat with her, and on the way back she said, when are you going to get married? And I said, gave her my whole story. And she went, oh, who's that? And I said, oh, Martin from the cathedral, you won't know him. And she went, oh, he was our best man. I nearly came off the road. So then a little while later, Martin was at their house, and he said, he was with the husband, who said, oh, what do you think of Fiona Harrison, as I was then? And Martin said, as what? Which seemed harsh. And so that sort of opened the conversations a bit, really. And then over the new year, I'd gone to the cinema with my friend, and we'd called in to get a curry on the way home, and this husband and wife were there. So we went and sat with them, and we had our meal in with them. And we all decided to do a novena for each other. We all picked sort of names out of a hat, really. So I'll do a novena for you.
Such a lovely idea.
Isn't it sweet? This is the most Catholic thing I've ever done. The girl said, I've got you, so I'm going to do the novena to St. Raphael for you and Martin. Off you go, I said. And I was a little bit sceptical. I was like, well, this could be nothing. It could be something. And that was New Year's Eve, 5th of January. He asked me out.
Wow.
And I freaked out. I absolutely freaked out. I went into complete panic. No, I was at
In
no.
adoration.
Yes, that's right. No, I was just praying. I was resting the Lord. No, he came round and we. Have you got some? What have you got? This one's off the tree to take them home if you want to actually make things. So 5th of January, he'd come round to our house for a dinner. There'd been lots of people.
Is this all prayer group related networks?
Kind of, yeah, pretty much,
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, all kind of church people and prayer group people. And he didn't leave. And then he continued to not leave. And my friend went to bed and I was on my own. I was like, why are you still here? What is happening?
What, chatting?
Yeah, well, sort of awkwardly, yeah. I was kind of like, and then he sort of, you know, bless him, very, very sweetly, very awkwardly kind of went, I just feel like maybe the Lord would like us to maybe date. Maybe go out somewhere on a date. I lost my mind completely. And I was like, okay, no, that's absolutely fine. No, okay, we'd have to go now. I've got work tomorrow. And kind of threw him out of the house and shut the door in a complete panic.
You said yes?
I did, yeah. I did say yes. I don't know if I did say yes actually at the time. I think maybe I texted him later going, oh, by the way, also yes. So I just panicked. I was like, he's not someone who dates casually. If he's asking me out, that's because he's thought about it, has lit a million candles, prayed 100 rosaries. This is not going to be a casual dating scenario. So then I was like, what if I've misread this whole thing, and what if I hurt him and break his heart, and that'd be awful. I couldn't bear it. So I lost my mind a little bit and kind of talked myself off the ledge. Yeah, we went out, and a couple of weeks later I moved away to Kent to work in a retreat centre because I'd already committed to it by the time he asked me out.
God's timing.
I know, right? Hilarious. So yeah, so then we did most of our dating kind of on the A14, M11. I mean, what we realised actually was that because we had to do most of our dating on the phone, we really talked about things. So we weren't going to the cinema, we weren't doing things that didn't facilitate conversation. So he'd ring me most nights at about 1:30 in the morning when I finished work, and we'd have a proper talk about things. And we've often said actually that was a really great time because we were learning to get to know each other. It was almost like a normal dating scenario kind of sped up, if you like, because you're sharing so much and learning so much about each other when you are talking so much in that way, that actually it's a bit like, you know, that 8 months we spent doing that was like 2 years of regular dating in some ways.
That is an amazing way to look at long distance relationships.
We said that with hindsight. At the time we were like, gosh, this is quite hard. And then 2 years later we were like, wasn't it great that time we were doing all the sharing on the phone? Wasn't it great? But at the time we were like, oh, I'm so tired. We first started talking about getting engaged, I think in the May. At the Easter he'd sort of told me that he thought he was falling in love with me. And again, I completely freaked out. I didn't really respond in any positive way. And so then in the May he came down to see me. We first started talking about possibly getting married, and that's when I bought my first bridal magazines. And then I was quite control freaky about the proposal, which I realise now in hindsight isn't ideal. I should have let him do what he wanted to do. But I wanted him to propose in Lourdes because I did think there was something a bit weird about if we just go out to dinner, just the two of us, and then we go back to our own houses on our own after something so massive. That felt a bit weird. I was like, well, these people have travelled with me like for such a long time during such difficult times, and they really are like
Your
family
Lourdes
to me,
people.
my Lourdes people. And wouldn't it be great if we got engaged and then came back and celebrated with all the Lourdes people, and my dad was coming to Lourdes then as well, so you know he would have been there. And
So you made a little suggestion to Martin?
no, I told him straight. That's how that was going to happen.
Well done, Martin.
I know, it's very good. And then we got engaged in Lourdes. And yeah, and then after so that was in the August, and then we got married the following November, so sort of 15, 16, December, 8th of December, 16, 17 months later at the cathedral, because we both had lots of history there. Yeah.
And then in this time then you were finding out about Martin, and who was Martin? What was this big profile he had?
Yeah, well, I had no idea that he had this profile, but he was a speaker on the sort of regional Catholic sort of circuit, really. So he was doing these Passover suppers during Lent, where he'd go to churches and unpack how Jesus fulfilled the Passover. No one else in your family converted?
No,
How did
no,
you
just me.
even
Yeah.
think of it?
I was born in an Orthodox Jewish community, and I had the usual sort of rites of passage. So circumcised, 8 days old, all the usual stuff. And then when I was 13, I had my bar mitzvah, where you become an adult in the community. And the rabbi laid his hands on me and prayed, "May the Lord bless you and protect you. May he cause his face to shine upon you." Aaron's priestly blessing. And my faith was important to me, but it was very much a God who's up there in the clouds, in the heaven, not a personal relationship with God as I would now understand that to be. But my faith and my Jewishness was important to me, and I'd never questioned it. You know, it was important. And when I was 18, I went to study in Preston, so I studied psychology. So it was the first time I was away from home. And through a whole load of circumstances, I ended up living in a shared house. And one of the people that was living in the house, obviously I'd never met her before, was a young woman called Emma, who was a practicing Catholic. And from when I first met her, there was just something about her that stood out. She just had a peace, a joy, a serenity. She was also very pretty blonde as well. So there was a natural, oh, I like you, you're very nice. And as time went by, we just struck up a really good friendship. And she was asking about my Judaism, and she explained to me what her faith was about. And I thought, oh, very good. I'm happy for you, but it didn't sort of mean anything. And as time went on, sort of, and the friendship got deeper and deeper, it was important for me to understand what she was about. She went back to her hometown in Manchester, and she said she was going to Mass. Now, I'd never set foot in a Catholic church, and she said, if you want to come, you can come to church with us, but if not, that's fine. So I said, out of respect, I just thought, well, she's been kind enough to have me visit. And I went to the church, and when I set foot in the church, it just amazed me at how similar the church was to the Jewish synagogue, because in a Jewish synagogue you would have the scrolls of the Torah and the everlasting light showing the presence of God in the Word of God. So when I went in a Catholic church and I saw the light, and I said to Emma, what's that? She said, oh, it's
the sanctuary lamp.
on the sanctuary lamp. So I said, what's that? And she said, oh, it's a sign of the real presence of the Blessed Sacrament, which of course I didn't know what that meant. But I thought, oh, that's weird. That's very similar to the Jewish experience of synagogue and worship. And I experienced Mass for the first time, and I didn't understand the language, the terminology. But by the end of Mass, I was crying and crying and crying. Now, I wasn't a person at that age, I was 18, who cried a lot. It would be if Liverpool had lost in a final, that's when I would cry. Yet clearly, it touched me so deeply. As I say, we'd sort of respect each other in our particular faith. And there was one time when Emma was in her room, and this was about a year on or so. I thought she was calling me, and I went to see her. And she was speaking in Hebrew. And I said, Emma, what are you doing? And she was saying the word Kiddushanu, which in English means sanctify us, make us holy. She had no idea what she was saying. And I said, what are you doing? And she said she was praying in tongues. And I said, what? What on earth does that mean? And she explained that that's one of the gifts, the fruits of the Holy Spirit, that you can pray in a language to God. I said, but I understand that word. It's Hebrew. It's in almost every single Jewish prayer. So as you can imagine, this was making a deep impression on me.
What amuses me is that he talks about his friend Emma, who was a massive part of his conversion. And when I'm with Martin, where he gives his conversion, we're sitting in a room of people, and I can see them side-eyeing me going, well, this must be Emma. And then, of course, I'm not Emma. And it's a little bit disappointing. They're just a bit, oh. I'm like, no.
Let some in my hands now.
All right, great. That's what they're for. What a great idea.
And what sort of age were you when you got married, if you don't mind me asking?
I was older. I'm trying to do the maths now.
Don't worry about doing the math.
I was 33, I'm going to say. So I was
Not
33.
tapping, no.
So yeah, I was 33. Martin was 36, 37. So we met sort of later than sort of most of my sisters met their partners, and most of our friends were married by then as well. So we were kind of a bit late to the party.
And then this is where you started to discover what we're going to be talking about a lot in this conversation. That was that God maybe didn't have children for you in his wonderful plan for your life. Mm-hmm. And so how did that start to play out? How did you start to discover that?
I'd always had incredibly painful periods, like blackout painful periods, but it's very hard to get that stuff looked at by doctors. So it was only when we'd been married probably 3 or 4 years, and we were thinking this just isn't happening, and we weren't entirely sure why, but we knew that sex was incredibly painful to the point of like almost not being worth it, just absolute agony painful for me. And that didn't seem right, but it's a very difficult thing to go to the doctors about. So I didn't, obviously. And it was when I was I'd at work, I'd be, kind of ashen and grey and clammy and really poorly, and other women were saying to me, this isn't normal. I know you think it is. This level of pain is not normal. I'm like, oh, it's fine. I'll have a hot water bottle and, 15 painkillers, it'll be fine. And that's all the doctors did, really. I went about my painful periods, but they would concentrate quite a lot on treating the symptoms.
Pain management.
Exactly. I was taking these massive horsebusms, they were absolutely huge, slow release 1 a day tablets, and I was taking them most of the month, truth be told. And so they kind of they kind of managed it a bit, but it was still very, very painful. You know, it was all a bit erratic and, you know, sort of random hemorrhaging after you think your period's finished and all that kind of stuff. But it was only when I went to have one of my smear tests that the nurse, who was using the teeny tiniest speculum she could find, and it was just agony. And I remember holding onto the wall. I remember the tears going into my hair as I lay there. And she said, "Oh, is it always like this?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Have you got children?" And I just started crying. And I was like, "No, I do not." And so I sort of told her. And that's when she said, "Well, this isn't normal. This isn't okay. Let's get you referred to some kind of specialist," which was wonderful. And I'm so grateful to her for doing that. On the other hand, I'm a bit frustrated that it was only when it became a fertility issue that suddenly there seemed to be a phenomenal amount of resources to throw at this problem. All my years and years and years of going to the doctor repeatedly saying that my periods were too painful, and them just wanted to put me on the pill. That was the other thing. They just wanted to contracept the life out of me. And I kept saying, "I don't want to be on the pill." My mum had a massive stroke. My mum had breast cancer. My dad's got high blood pressure. And I wasn't in relationships. That wasn't a contraceptive thing for me. But I was like, seriously, that's not what I want. I don't want that. And one doctor actually said to me, "Well, if you're not prepared to help yourself." I said, "Right, okay then." It just was their only solution to it. So I got referred to a gynaecologist, and they did an exploratory surgery which showed that I had endometriosis, which 1 in 10 women have, alarmingly.
A lot of people.
The last few years, people are talking about it more, which is great. But no, certainly when I was diagnosed, it was a real unknown quantity.
And I suppose without social media, things can very easily be very quiet.
Yeah.
It's a slightly more sort of welcoming forum if you can kind of speak without necessarily having your face there.
While I was on social media and it was kind of just coming in, it wasn't somewhere I would think to look to for information about that kind of thing. Like, it wouldn't have occurred to me years and years ago to have even done that.
And this sort of all of it came to a head when about 3 years later, when I'd reached the decision where I thought, you know what, I do believe that Jesus is the Messiah, and I'm convinced it was the prayer of people. And by this stage, I really was aware of how important the role of Our Lady is in our lives, because they used to pray the rosary in the prayer group, and I started going to the prayer group. And at first I thought, how many times are they going to say, "Hail Mary, Hail Mary"? But as time went on, I just felt that motherly presence in my heart of who Our Lady is. And as we discussed earlier, in the Jewish faith, the role of the Queen Mother is more important than actually the King's wife. So I had no issues with Mary and the role that the Catholic Church sees her, not adoring her, but honouring her, you know. So to me, that was just purely natural. It wasn't an issue. So I made a decision to be received into the Catholic Church, and I wanted it to be on a feast day in honour of Our Lady. So it was January the 1st, 1994, the feast of the Solemnity of Mary, Mother of God. Now, I had no idea what the readings were going to be. I just picked that date because it was a Saturday and it was a feast day to Our Lady.
A good start to the year.
A great start to the year, absolutely. And I was thinking, you know, who can do this role, who my sponsors will be, who the readers will be. And lo and behold, we looked at what the readings were for that particular day. And the first reading was, "May the Lord bless you and protect you. May he cause his face to shine upon you." So you can imagine, I thought, oh my word, that was my bar mitzvah prayer. The second reading was about Jesus being born a subject of the law, and about having the courage to cry out, "Abba, Father." And Abba in Hebrew just means daddy. It literally means like a baby would call the dad daddy. And then lo and behold, the gospel reading was the circumcision of Jesus. There's me thinking I'd picked this day. Clearly the Lord had picked that day. Somebody had some water from the River Jordan, so I was baptised in water from the Jordan. And I think the important thing was that I hadn't shared this with my family, going back to your question. And I felt, you know, if I was to be a person of integrity, I needed to share this with my family. And in my weakness, I just didn't have the courage to do it, because I thought they might cut me off, and what would happen, and it would cause a lot of pain for them in the Jewish community in Liverpool, and I didn't want to put them through that. So I just said to people, can you just pray for this situation? I remember it was June 1994, and I just said to my parents, so I'm just going out for a walk, secretly going to Mass. And the gospel reading that day was that I am the bread come down from heaven, not like the bread that your ancestors ate in the desert, the manna from heaven. I am the true manna from heaven. And I thought, wow, what a reading. And I just floated home. My heart was on fire. You know, like with the Emmaus story, did not our hearts burn within us?
So the doctors kind of said, well, we'll need to just do this excise, these growths that you've got. And so that would set me up for about 18 months. Then I'd have to go in and have it done again. So I was on an 18-month cycle of having these surgeries where I'd be off work for 2 weeks and have another surgery, be off work for 2 weeks, having these sort of regular surgeries. While they would reduce the pain of my periods, they didn't really reduce the pain of sex ever so much at all. I mean, it was just...
What a huge challenge for your marriage.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a much bigger challenge were I married somebody who wasn't Martin, who was just golden. And he's exactly the person you would want to be married to in that situation. You know, he never put any pressure on me. He never said, right, we're going to stop sorting this out once and for all. We're not having this. This isn't what it's meant to be like. We're going to get this sorted. There was none of that. It was just like, oh my gosh, how can I help you? How can I help you be okay? And, you know, and that's really what I needed. Yeah, it was really hard. And it was really hard because we fully expected to have children. And I think most people do. If it's something that they want, we don't sort of question whether that's going to be something that will happen for us or not. Yeah. We just assume that we will. Yeah, so the questions did start coming, and also the assumptions started being made as well, which was in a way a little bit harder. So I've never been super skinny, ever. I've always had a little tummy, which I can normally hide behind a guitar. And so occasionally when somebody would congratulate me on being pregnant, that was really hard. I'd have to explain that my baby was made of crisps. Yeah, it was really challenging, and just this sense that, this expectation that we had, but that I felt that others had as well of us.
And then you're in an environment where it's not necessarily appropriate to start telling them all the information of what's going on.
I did sort of start saying, once I was diagnosed, otherwise I'd be very apologetic, going, yes, I know, I'm sorry, no, I know, it just hasn't happened for us yet. But once I was diagnosed, I started saying, it's quite hard for us because I have a condition called endometriosis. And I thought, awareness raising, but also it's just good for you to know that actually it doesn't happen naturally and normally and quickly and immediately on demand for everyone. People would kind of go, oh, right, and okay. But I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable by saying that, but I just needed them to know that this wasn't our choice.
It feels like you maybe would feel like, are you being a scandal? You know, when you're, trying to live your Catholic life really genuinely, and then being really misunderstood.
Yeah, I definitely had a sense that that there were some people who kind of felt that I was choosing not to have children because I had a career. It's interesting because the exact reverse would be the case. So I have a good career because I didn't have anything else to pour my energy into, in a way. I love my job, I love my work, but you know, that's how it worked out for me, in that I had all this time to devote to my career.
And at this time, was social media, like you were saying, it was a little bit on the up at this time? Were people expressing themselves out on social media?
4 or 5 years ago, I thought, oh, do you know what? I'm going to see if there's a community of people out there who are having a similar experience to us. And there sort of wasn't, that I could find, really. So I started writing a blog about our experience, because another thing that we found was that well-meaning, good, kind, well-meaning people would ask us about things that we really weren't in a position to do. So they would say, so will you do IVF then? And I would have to say, well, no, we can't do IVF because it goes against the church's teaching on sexuality and reproduction. And they'd be like, no, but like you could though, to have a baby, like, because like you want to have children, right? Yes. And there was a piece of scripture in Romans that I read recently, and it just really fits with that, where it says, you know, the suffering that we have now is nothing compared to the joy of which awaits us. And I think that, you know, for me, well, for Martin as well, you know, we didn't want to do something that could potentially impact our eternal happiness in that sense. So it wasn't on the table for us, especially. And you know, people also thinking that that adoption is kind of the solution, really. So you could adopt though, and yes, I could adopt, and you know, we possibly would be successful, but we've got friends who've gone through the process, and it's brutal. And we know ourselves well enough, Martin and I, to kind of think, well, do you know what, we are not emotionally resilient enough for that process, to go through that process. So there weren't sort of solutions out there for us, really. There wasn't really a community for us. So I started blogging about it and talking about what my experience was of trying to get diagnosed and trying to deal with it, really. It was, and as I say, it's quite lonely and then quite isolating when there aren't others. And it's not something the church talks about either, which is another frustration, I think.
Did you find any saint that you could relate to?
Oh, I tried. I must have got to page 40 on Google. And the thing is, like, you search patron saint infertility, and they come up, but they're all saints who were infertile and then conceived. So you've got Elizabeth and you've got Sarah and you've got, you know, all these great saints of Scripture, but who all conceived in the end. And so when the infertility is a permanent situation for you, as it is now for us, because I had to have hysterectomy, when you're in the position where that is a permanent state, there isn't a saint for you to turn to. There isn't a friend to walk along.
Fiona.
Yes, I know. And Martin will feel that. We leaned heavily on John Paul II just to help us navigate it, but also learn to live with it and learn to adjust our expectations of what our marriage was going to be, really, which was a huge part of what we needed to do.
And I sat down and my mum and dad said, we want to talk to you, Martin. We know there's something going on in your life. We don't know if you've killed someone or you're on drugs or something, but we know there's something going on that you're hiding from us. And the gospel reading just came back to me and I had this tremendous peace come over me. And in the next hour, I shared with them everything that I'd gone through. I told them the truth and the little white lies I'd told to protect myself. And I just came out with it all and said I'd been baptised as a Catholic and everything. And as you can imagine, it was very difficult for them. And they said, so does that mean that you don't love us anymore and that you're just going to do your own thing? And I said, no, it doesn't mean that. It means that, please God, I can love you in a better way than I could ever love you before, because my life is on a different path now. And to me, it hopefully means that by becoming a Christian, I'm going to be a better person. And although they found it difficult, they realised that that was a decision that I'd made of my own volition and that it was something that I wouldn't turn away from. And I think, you know, just sort of finishing that off, really, the real blessing was they got to meet Fiona, because I wanted them to be at our wedding, and they passed away about 10 years ago now, but they were able to be present at our wedding, and I was just so grateful that they could be there for that. When we were preparing for the wedding, we thought, gosh, how do we do this? And Fu was worried about, well, what if there's a Christmas tree and there's a crib? I said, love, that's the least of our issues. There's a big cross up there which says Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. He said, Lord, just guide us. And we did Bible bingo. We just said, Holy Spirit, just guide us. And we opened up, and the scripture we turned to was when Jesus says to Peter, but you, who do you say that I am? So we thought, okay, Lord, okay. And we just thought, right, we're just going to be free here. We're going to be free in the Lord, and we're going to do the hymns that we want, that will give glory to God and to those that come to the wedding. It was beautiful, and we felt as though that the Lord blessed it, and even some of my family said it was beautiful, and Hermione sang for us. So, you know, it really was an abundant blessing for us all.
And do you think there was anything you were called to in your prayer life? Did your prayer life change through this time? How did that all look?
I always feel like praying when things are going well is super easy, isn't it? But praying when things are hard, it's like a different kind of prayer. You know, praying in your desperation and in your sadness and in your kind of, you know, despair is a different kind of prayer. Yeah, it did. And I tried to use I think one of the lovely things that I love about the Catholic faith is its understanding of suffering. And I don't want to over-egg the suffering of it, because I'm incredibly blessed. And Martin and I have always said, you know, having each other is so much more than we ever dreamt either of us would have. So, you know, we're not ungrateful for what we have in any way, but not having the children that we wanted is a challenge. And so within that kind of struggle, I have found that the Catholic teaching around sort of the salvific effect of suffering, and being able to use your suffering in a way for others has been great. Even if I wasn't doing it because it felt very hard to do, it's very easy to sort of say, oh, well, I use my suffering for, you know, to be part of the, you know, the salvation plan of God. It's very easy to say that, but it's actually really hard work to try and do in any realistic way.
When you are suffering.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of go, well, I'd like to be able to do this. I'm not sure I'm pulling it off. I'd struggled emotionally with it quite a lot. I would struggle to see other people with their babies, or I would struggle to see people with their young children or pregnant women. And it was the emotional struggle that I had, I think, that was almost worse than the physical one in a way. And so I would always take that to Gethsemane. And I would always kind of think, well, if my little tiny teeny weeny speck of suffering that I'm doing now outside of the time and space, we know God's outside of time and space, if that can help relieve some of that in the Garden of Gethsemane, then let's just call that job done. And I'm not going to say I was always very good at it, but it was always my intention to try and have some value, because oftentimes it felt like it had absolutely no value for me. So to try and find it, to try and give it value for somebody else.
And it's a really intimate place to be called to be with Jesus in his suffering, in his loneliness, and be there together and somehow suffer together. And then also what you were saying about the uniqueness of the Catholic Church in the value of suffering, and that we can unite ourselves with Jesus and his suffering, and he did suffer everything. I've had great consolation in that. We can offer it for others and other intentions. Did that help?
I think looking back on it now, I can kind of say, yeah, I can see that had a place then. I think at the time, if I'm totally honest, it probably didn't. It just hurt so badly, and it was so difficult that it probably didn't.
I think that says a lot about obedience, because at the time we don't necessarily see how, you know, and what we're doing and that it's okay, but now you're looking back thinking, I'm glad I followed the system. I did, you know, you didn't go down the road of IVF. And was that tough? Did you ever think, you know, the church has let me down? Did you ever, you know, feel you were misunderstanding it? You know, in that you couldn't then use these new ideas of being fertile that might have ended up with children. Did you feel like that?
I honestly don't. And I can't really pinpoint why that is, but I was never tempted to be perfectly honest. We never had a conversation about it. We never said, oh, is there a little gap, a little space we can sneak this through in teaching, a little tiny loophole we could perhaps use? And I think I just knew for a while there just wasn't one. So I was like, oh, we're just not even going to have that conversation because it just doesn't exist. I think I really appreciated the fact that I think what some people would see as the church being quite rigid and restrictive in what it says we can and can't do, I actually found real freedom in that, because it removed a lot of emotional baggage for me in a way. You know, as I said, we didn't have to think about that, because we're like, well, that's just not a thing for us, and it freed us up to deal with the reality of our lives being somewhat different to what our expectations had been. And it was probably a quicker process than it might otherwise have been if we'd, you know, gone down another road of using kind of, other methods of trying to conceive. It actually gave us that clarity of saying, we're not going to conceive, so actually we need to find a new purpose and a new value to our lives and our marriage. And I think one of the other things where I think the church could be more powerful in its teaching on marriage and family life would be about just talking about the intrinsic value of marriage in and of itself. You know, that our marriage isn't worthless because it hasn't produced children. You know, our marriage is as valuable as every single other marriage, and we just express that fruitfulness in a different way. You know, we run RCIA, I run our Lourdes pilgrimage. There's lots of things that we do that make us fruitful in a way that isn't having children, in a way that maybe somebody with a young family wouldn't be able to do. When I've tried to find communities of prayer that I can be part of, there's mothers' prayers, and is it the St. Joseph Apostolate, which is for parents, and you know, there's all these other things that exist for parents that don't exist for Catholics who don't have children. And I think I feel like now I need to set one up. Oh.
Yep, Fiona, there you go. She's just written.
I've just talked myself right into that. What are you to do? You put your thumb down, you. You can back it in.
There are these misconceptions, and it can be like, for me in the world, I find that, you know, I saw a friend the other day, or a neighbour, and she said, oh, you're expecting another one, this must be number 6. Wow, you don't value sleep much. And I thought, is that the only thing you can think of with the children? But sometimes I feel like it's good to promote big family life, because it's, you know, people are either quite against it, particularly with all this like climate change thing going on, and Prince Harry and Meghan being awarded for deciding to only have 2 children and not wanting to destroy the planet with any more. Little pitter-patters of carbon footprints. And so on one hand, you know, we want to show this joy, but how to do that tastefully and carefully and fairly. Have you got any ideas on that? Oh, Fiona,
I think
has lots of
yes,
great ideas.
Right. I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier. I think it just comes back to love. I think if we're speaking in love and behaving in love, and I think that's not something I'm always great at. You know, there are times when I know that I have snapped and spoken about my experience in a way that was less loving than it could have been. But I think if we're at least trying to speak in love and to draw people into a conversation, something that my friends and I talk about quite a lot is that we've kind of lost the ability to have nuanced discussion. It's either you agree with me wholeheartedly or you hate me. And we've lost that sense of nuance where we can say, well, no, I love you dearly, I don't agree with you about these things. One of the ways perhaps that social media has made discussion and dialogue more polarised.
So Fiona, hysterectomy, if you don't mind going back to that, huge decision.
Yeah, it was massive, and I think because we were sent to a gynaecologist who was brilliant. I mean, I would have trusted her to operate on me with a rusty nail in the car park. She was absolutely amazing. And when it became clear that my endometriosis had developed to a point where it was dangerous for me to not have it treated, and she said the best thing for you to do, I believe, as a surgeon, is to have hysterectomy. And so for us, obviously, it's a massive operation anyway at the best of times, but also as Catholics, that's a massive decision because, you know, it closes the door very firmly. It was a really big decision for us. And so Martin was, as usual, completely golden. And, you know, it was just saying, well, we need to think about it and pray about it. And we just need to, you know, I don't want you to be in pain, I don't want you to be in danger, but we need to really think and pray about it, which we did. And our surgeon was great. We went back and forth numerous times with her, sometimes asking the same question over and over again. And she was so incredibly patient that it just came to the point where it was just daily life was very hard. And because of the level of pain that I was in this, you know, and it was only going to get worse, we did make the decision to go ahead with hysterectomy. And again, you know, in some senses there was some freedom in that. You know, it wasn't something we chose for our own convenience in any way. It was medically necessary, and we prayed really hard, and we didn't feel that we were being told we couldn't do it or that we shouldn't do it. So that was a huge decision, but it was a good decision. My life is immeasurably better for it, if I can say that without sounding like I should have not done it. You know, because there is always that sense that, you know, I mithered about it, going, you know, are we making the wrong decision? Are we, you know, is this okay with God? Is this okay with God? And we just had to keep praying and praying.
This is a long process we were talking about, wasn't it? It was like, what, over 6 months?
About 6 months, yeah, from when she first mentioned it to when we agreed to do it.
Like, your surgeon is there and helping you, and this is a fertility, I suppose, in the brackets of the fertility help. And did she suggest things? And then was that then difficult? Because she's trying to help you. She maybe is trying to think that she's helping you, but she's suggesting things that are controversial.
Yeah, so she would sort of say, we need to do some fertility tests on you and your husband. And I was like, tests on my husband, thinking, I think I know what that's going to involve. And I was like, yeah, my husband won't be doing that. And while she wasn't Catholic and didn't know anything about Catholicism, she was really open to what I was saying. So I would say, I'm afraid that's not something my husband's able to do. You know, for religious reasons, he's not able to do that. And she was actually great. But she was never like, oh, for goodness sake, which I thought she could be. I thought we might get some proper eye rolling and some, this is ridiculous, you must just help yourselves. Initially asked us about IVF and other treatments, and I said, I'll just tell you right now, those things are not on the table for us, so we need to look at other things. Essentially what I'm looking for is, you know, essentially what I needed was just to keep having these surgeries to excise all my growths every 18 months, and I come back to 18 months and we'll do it again, you know, until either it comes to the point where something drastic has to happen, like hysterectomy, or I naturally enter menopause. That's kind of what our cycle needs to be, because there isn't really anything, any other way that we can kind of pursue this ethically.
And how was that for
as far as we're
Martin? I know you're great at talking, and he sounds like really great cheerleader, but sometimes I wonder, is the man maybe not looked at or not seen as somebody who can be carrying this cross as well?
Yeah, I won't deny it. It was hard. It was very hard because, as Fu had said earlier, for both of us there was almost an expectation that kids would come along, and, you know, because we were trying to live in accordance of the church, we thought the Lord will bless us in that natural way. And I guess because it didn't happen, you know, you're sort of thinking, oh, okay, is this going to happen or isn't it going to happen? It was very difficult, and, you know, especially like we were just praying for the Lord to bless us and to guide us. And as Fu had said earlier, you know, you're praying for God's will to be done, but when the desire of your heart is to have kids, you think, well, that's a very natural desire, and why isn't it happening? So painful, yeah, very much so. And I think really as time went on as well, it was sort of just trying to see what God's plan was for us in this. And also it was so the biggest pain for me was seeing Fu in pain. That was my real pain of, the physical pain that Fu was going through. That was probably for me the hardest thing, because that was the last thing I wanted. I didn't want to be causing her pain, and I didn't want her to have that pain every month that she was going through. And I guess once we knew that she needed the hysterectomy, in a funny sort of way, from my point of view, I think that's maybe when a bit of my peace came, because we thought, actually, we're not living in hope anymore of will it happen, won't it happen? That was the biggie. This is the final part of it. We know it won't happen after this. I went to counselling, and because, emotionally it was really tough to deal with, but I thought I need some help to get me through the emotions of that. As it happened, it was probably the easiest session that a counsellor ever had, because I cried for half an hour. And then at the end of the session, I thought, I'm done here. It's okay. I just needed to have a place where I could let my emotions out and just go with it. I remember the priest that married us, actually, Father John Newdris, great guy. And I always remember him saying that in trying to discern God's will, sometimes we try to fight it and we try to force or control things to happen. But when we actually let go, really let go, not say I let go, but really let go and stop controlling things, that's when God can really take over. And that really struck with me and still does sort of ring true for me. And I think at that point I just thought, like, just let go. And that did help me a lot, really. It really did. It was painful that we knew that we wouldn't be able to have the children. But I think certainly, again, from my point of view, God has blessed us so much to be fruitful in a different way. The RCIA, it's great to be able to journey with people in helping them to come to know the Lord better. So in a way, those candidates are like spiritual children for us. I've got my nephew and my niece. Fu's got nephews and nieces. So it's not about compensation. I think it's about accepting God's will in your life and realising that. I think there was a point where Fu and I had the conversation and saying, we don't know what God has spared us from. Who's to say what would have happened if Fu had maybe fallen pregnant, and because of the endometriosis, it could have put her life at risk. That's a realistic thing. So, we were thinking, we don't know what the bigger picture here is, but we've got to trust to know that God does know the bigger picture. And again, that sort of gave me peace that God knows what he's doing. We might not, but he does. And I remember vividly when I was at work one day when we'd been to the gynecologist, and she said, you're going to the best option, it would appear, is having a hysterectomy. And I went into work on the Monday morning, and I've got a good friend, and she said, how was your weekend? And I just cried. I think for me as a man, it's also helped me to get in touch with my feelings and my emotions. I mean, I've never been short of talking, for those that know me, but those deeper emotional things that guys don't often talk about. I thought
you're the protector. You're the man of the house, and you want to hold it up and keep things going, and maybe not want to let it go.
But it's okay for me to have those wobbles as well. It's okay for me to say, actually, I'm having a tough day and I'm struggling, and just going with it. So I think that's helped me sort of in my journey. I went to counselling probably 6 months later than I should have done. I probably should have gone earlier, but I was just, again, it was pride, probably just thinking, I can cope with this, I'll be all right. But just that question that morning, that just cut to the chase, because she's a good friend, and when she asked it, it just came out. And I think one of the great things now is, for example, what we're doing here today, it's an opportunity to help other people, because there will be other people in a similar position who have maybe got no support or thinking they're going through this on their own. And if we can help people in any way, that is from our sort of shared experience, to say, it's okay, you're not on your own, and that God can use this and God can be glorified through this. I feel as fulfilled as a person now as I ever have done. The life that we're living, to be married and in a happy marriage, means so much to us. Our faith, it's very easy to be idyllic about it all, but it's in the nitty-gritty living of it. That's the reality of it. and maybe sometimes we can miss that, and this is life, this is what it's like, this is it, you know, and we can either fight against it or by God's grace embrace it.
It feels like it will always leave a shadow in some way, so a shadow on us a little bit, in that we sort of carry it sort of like an internal shadow in some ways, and you know, some days better than others. There are some days where I'm like, yay, people having babies, and other days where I'm like, if I hear one more person's having a baby at exactly the time they wanted one, you know, and then I will cry. But I think we have made our peace with it as much as we are able to on this side.
Fiona,
And
you
others.
are wonderful. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
It's been wonderful. It's been great to have you here.
Such a gift to talk to you. And thank you for talking about something that
Save.
that is just really tough. Thank you for watching. Please keep Fiona and Martin in your prayers as always, and we love to hear from you. If you want to make comments in the comment section, you know, if you want to connect or if you've got a similar story, then let us know. Thank you. If you're enjoying the channel or you feel like it can be worthy and of value to others, please continue or consider supporting us. Thank you so much, and God bless.